Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I'm your host, Evan Abrams. And as always, for the best episode, I am joined by Brandon Anderson. But before we get into those, we're going to talk a few trends. We're going to list some topics, some futures, some award stuff, and it's going to be fun to discuss. And we're going to, we both have opinions here going back and forth. First of all, Brandon, what's up? How are you?
I'm good. I'm ready for some good action. We had a great weekend of football last week. It's a little bit of a weirder slate, this one. I must say, I was not excited when I first looked into it, but here's what happens. If there's a slate that I don't love at first, what that should mean is maybe just a couple less bets. What it actually means is I spend twice as long on it and come up with twice as many niche bets. We got some props. We got some first quarter bets. We're going to have a little fun today, but I'm excited for another good weekend of football.
Yeah, when you have 8 or 9 road favorites, you know something crazy is going to happen this weekend. But let's get into the first one here. So double-digit favorites this season are 5-0 straight up and 5-0 against the spread. This week, we have 2. KC at Carolina, Dallas at Washington. Brandon, what's your opinion on both these games? Do you have a lean one way or the other?
Yeah, so we took Washington already on the look ahead, minus 9.5. Yep. So we're getting a little bit of CLV there, at least for now. I am a little concerned. I really expected Lattimore to be ready to go here, and he still is not necessarily practicing. I'd love to have him out there against CeeDee Lamb. Would feel much better against really the only threat on Dallas's offense, if they can even get him the ball. Offensive line still a little bit banged up. This was, they played Thursday a week ago, so a little extra time, still not quite there. So I like Washington. Remember, the big thing there is that Washington-Dallas has not been a close rivalry. 15-point spread or more, 5 games in a row, double digits, 9 of the last 10. On the other side, we know about the Mahomes trend, right? We know about Mahomes when he's a big favorite. My concern with taking the Carolina side is that Kansas City just wants to run up the middle, basically, and just move the chains on you. And they're top 10 at that, and they do that about 3/4 of their run plays. The Panthers just can't stop their run. So I'm kind of staying away from that game. Do you like either side here?
I'll give you a stat I used on the favorites this morning because I just think it shows which way this Kansas City game will go. So Mahomes has started 44 games as a road favorite. When the home team scores less than 20, he's 11-0-2 against the spread as a road favorite. When they score 20 or more, he is 9-22 against the spread. This is all just about Carolina's team total, basically. Like can Bryce Young find a way to get 3 touchdowns or 17 points area in this one, or is he going to put up a 9 spot in case he's going to run it up the middle and kind of go their merrily way? To my opinion, it's a stay away. I kind of like the Washington one better. Even though this is Washington's biggest favorite versus Dallas since 2000, I do think the injuries on the Dallas side, I know they've had the Zach Martin, the Jake Ferguson, Guyton's had a problem, Tyler Smith. They have a lot of injuries entering this one, and things haven't exactly looked great. Lost 5 straight up and against the spread. So I would lean Washington either way.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And one more double-digit favorite to come next week, just a little teaser. When we get to the look ahead, I will be backing another one there.
Oh, woof. All right, we'll get to that one. Okay, next one. Let's go quick here. We're going to talk about awards for a second because I know definitely your specialty. But right now, Josh Allen's the favorite for MVP. Saquon, Offensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year. Jaden Daniels, Offensive Rookie of the Year. And Jared Verse, Defensive Rookie of the Year. So my question to you is, do you back any of these? Is there a fun parlay to do on the favorites? Is there a long shot? What's your overall thought process going in right now?
Yeah, it's a tough spot on awards. Nothing really leaps off the page for me here. I think I don't mind if you want to do the Rookie of the Year favorites parlay. Just play Jaden and Verse basically together is about even odds, just slightly in the minus there. I think that looks about right to me. Typically, Rookie of the Year tends to go to one of the top 3 picks at the position, offense or defense. And so that's what both of those guys are. They got the name brand recognition. They got the lead. They got the minus odds right now, and the numbers are there. It's just hard for me to see somebody closing. I don't buy the Bo Nix thing on Jaden Daniels. And Defensive Rookie of the Year, I don't know. This Verse has been really good by the metrics. All the nerds are talking about him on the podcast I listen to, so he's great. But the stats, the sacks and everything aren't quite there. I think you probably get the job done. The 2 names I'd be looking to fade a little bit here, Saquon, Offensive Player of the Year. I don't think he's even the right favorite right now. I think it should be Derrick Henry still as the favorite. And I still think Jamar Chase is closing hard. He leads all the receiving categories. I think Henry and Chase both have a chance to get the triple crown, the attempts and or receptions in Chase's case, and yards and touchdowns. Saquon got Baltimore and Pittsburgh in the next month, and the main problem with him, he doesn't get those touchdowns always because Jalen Hurts is stealing him at the goal line. So I don't know that he would be third for me. I do think it's probably one of those three. And I'm curious what you think about MVP. I do have a long shot I came up with, but where are you at on these awards here?
Okay, so let's start with Defensive Rookie of the Year. And these are going to be both a little bit of a dart throws, but I think that's what kind of makes this fun. I still think Latu from the Colts has a shot here.
Mm.
He's got 3 sacks. He's 2 back of Verse and Fisk. And obviously, they're on the same team. So at some point, could it be a situation where they take votes away from each other? Maybe not, but I do think Latu has a chance here. He's second in QB hits behind Verse, second in pass rush snaps behind Verse. So he's on the field all the time. And I do think, and I know we've talked about this a few times, Colts, Lions, I think there's an opportunity this weekend with a lot of people paying attention in that game. If he got to Goff once or twice, maybe there's a fumble of some sorts. I think Indy stays in the game, shockingly enough. That's just my opinion. So I think Latu offers some value. And the other one I'll talk about, Defensive Player of the Year. TJ Watt's the rightful favorite. I think you can talk about different people who have chances to get up there. I think one guy that I'm interested in is Kirby from the Lions. So I want him to win the award, but obviously safeties have a very difficult chance of doing this. But here's the lineup that the Lions have coming up: Indy, Chicago, Green Bay, Buffalo, Chicago. That is a lot of potential interceptions for a guy who already leads the league in the category. He is a top coverage grade on PFF too. So not only is he getting picks, but he's doing a great job. And, after that stretch, he could have 10 plus interceptions. I just think right now, if I'm looking, let's see, he is between 30 and 35 to 1 to win the award. So those are my 2 long shots. The issue with MVP when I was going through that market, I want a prime time spot to kind of help out at this point in the season. Like, I want them to be on Sunday Night Football, throw 4 touchdowns, obviously not lose the game like Burrow, but win the game and look good. I kind of wanted Jaden Daniels, but again, he doesn't have enough of the counting stats from a passing touchdown point of view, in my opinion, to win the award. And he also doesn't have a primetime spot. They're basically outside the window the entire rest of the year. So would he need to win out? Would he, what would be the circumstance where he would float to the top there? And obviously, 5th easiest schedule and a rookie narrative. So if he got close, maybe he would get a bump. But other than that, it's hard to really find, in my opinion, a long shot unless you want to go back to like Burrow, but they've just got to keep winning games. And that goes back to your chase bet. So maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, so we're actually on a similar page here as far as looking for the primetime spot. So I'm not sold that this is just Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Lamar's got 4 losses already, probably going to lose again at some point. You got to be the 1 or 2 seed to get this award. Baltimore is in big trouble now to be able to do that. Josh Allen, the rightful favorite, would win if it was today, just had the Heisman moment, beat the Chiefs. That's going to fade. That's going to fade, 6 weeks from now. And we're going to look back at the stats and be like, he had like 1 passing touchdown. Like, was it really that? Like, no, it was a great game. We know right now how good it was. Our minds forget. Allen is going to have a bad game sometime. He's going to throw some more interceptions. That's what he does with his game. He's going to have great moments, but some bad moments. I want a sleeper. Here's the name I came up with. This is a spot I had circled before the season. He is not in the running right now. This is a long shot. Jordan Love, 60 to 1. And here's why. I want the primetime spot like you. Here's the schedule. 49ers this week, Sunday afternoon, game of the week, national television. Everybody's watching Packers-Niners. It's kind of an elimination game. The week after that, Miami on TV. Then at Detroit, huge game Thursday night on TV, or at least Amazon Prime. Then Seattle, then the Saints, both TV. 5 games in a row right now. The Packers are scheduled on television in a national TV spot. Everyone will be watching Jordan Love. Then the game after that's at Minnesota, which probably flexes into a big TV spot if Love is playing well and the Packers are winning these games. He averaged his first 5 games when healthy, 3 touchdowns a game. He's fallen off a lot the last few games. He leads the league in interceptions. I know he missed 2 games. There's a lot of reasons he's not the MVP. It's why it's 60 to 1. However, last 6 games, half the season now, Jordan Love is top 5 in EPA plus CPOE, and that is one of the best indicators. And we saw how well he closed last season. He's healthy coming out of the bye week 2 weeks ago. I think it's an extreme long shot. I just don't think it's 60 to 1. The runway is there. and there's enough touchdowns, and it's the Packers, and they're in the running to possibly steal a division if they win that Detroit game and get into the mix. I don't think it's going to happen, but if I'm looking for a long shot, I need runway. I think Jordan Love has a path to at least get into contention. What do you think about him?
Yeah, 60-1, it's interesting. I mean, listen, he has two prime time in the middle, everyone watching games with San Francisco and Miami, two defenses that can be beat. He's getting them both at home. He just has to go a game or two without throwing a pick. He's thrown a pick in every single game this year. So it's not even the fact that he is tied for the league lead, but he doesn't have a clean sheet on the schedule. So yeah, I looked at Love and almost had to say no because it just that many interceptions. I don't know how that guy gets the award, but you're right. It's 60-1. Maybe it should be a tad shorter. And if he goes on a little bit of a run here, I can get it. But all right, interesting enough. Let's go through a few more topics before we get into your best bets. So right now, Miami, Cincinnati, Chicago, and Tampa Bay are four teams just below 500. I want us to try to pick which one you think has the best chance currently to make the playoffs. You can go first, but I think we might be on the same page here.
Yeah, so I think it's two of the four that you at least can consider here. I don't think it's Chicago. You don't want an NFC wild card. And I don't think it's Miami. They're just a little too far back with a tough schedule. So Tampa Bay, you and I talked about this last week.
Yep.
I like the Bucs specifically because I don't trust the Falcons still. I think they have the best path of these four teams. They don't have to get the wild card. They just got to catch the Falcons, and the Falcons might catch them the wrong way, the way they've been playing lately. We bet Tampa 7-1 to win the division last week. I don't think you play the make playoff odds. If they make it, it's because they got in on the division here. Still 4-1. I think there's some value there. Their schedule, next three games, Giants, Panthers, Raiders. Those are three teams that all benched their opening day quarterback that Tampa gets up next. They still play after that the Cowboys with no Dak. They play the Panthers. They play the Saints. That is some very winnable games. And, the Falcons have a soft schedule too, but the Falcons are not a lot better than the Buccaneers. As far as the other one, Cincinnati, I think that Cincinnati, the way to play them is not necessarily make the playoffs, but I do think they're over 7.5 win total is a pretty good number. Now it's juiced around minus 150, but they've got games against Cowboys, Titans, and Browns. They're much better than those teams. They're 4-7. If they win those three, we're up to 7 wins. We only need one more win between two Pittsburgh games and a Denver game that they should compete in and have a good chance to win at least one of those. So I think that's a good way to play it. I think the whole to get to the playoffs might be too big at this point. I might rather play them week to week than by the playoff number and just play my spots. But I'd say Tampa and Cincy, if it's going to happen. Which team stands out for you?
Yeah, we're on the same page. Tampa's going to win, but not cover in New York this week. And I've already talked myself into that as DeVito's going to find a way to get into that, into the backside there. But the pick, I think, is probably Cincinnati just right now. They just have a really good opportunity. So they face Denver in week 17, who they really could get a game and a half on at that point in the head-to-head. Now, Miami has lost to Indy and doesn't play Denver. And Denver plays Indy and Cincinnati. So even with Denver, who is 2-4 against the AFC, which really matters, they could fall apart and lose that spot very easily, while Cincinnati at 2-5 versus the AFC would love that head-to-head advantage. So I do think there's an opportunity there for Cincinnati, and I think Cincinnati and Tampa is the right answer. All right, let's keep moving here. So let's talk divisions for a second. AFC North, NFC West. The only two divisions right now that are leader is under minus 300. So basically in the mix. What is your thought? Is there an angle at any team to take in those two divisions?
So I know we're both on one team in the NFC West. So I'm going to let you make the case for that team because I'll talk about them a little bit more later. But I think in the AFC North, Baltimore Ravens, I think you still have to like them in the division. I use FTN model a lot. They have the Ravens still almost 50-50 to win the division, even though they're now 2 games back of the Steelers with having lost the tiebreak. Pittsburgh still has all the rest of the division games left. I'm not necessarily sold on Pittsburgh yet. That was the voodoo Mike Tomlin spot. Baltimore is plus 160 to win the division. I would actually not play the division odds. I'd play the over 11.5. It's at plus 150. So it's basically the same price. But I think I can get to 12 wins and not win the division still if the Steelers keep winning games. I don't need the 10 cents there. I'd rather just take the 12. On the flip side, am I going to win this division with 11 games and go under but get the division? I don't think so. Pittsburgh's at 8 wins already. Like somebody's going to keep winning games there. So I think Baltimore. Then one other one. You said, the other 6 are big division leaders. I do have an article out this week. You can read it at actionnetwork.com. Lions are minus 400. I think that number is actually a little short because Minnesota and Green Bay are right there. That's 80% implied. They're more like 90, 95%. So not really a thing that I do a lot of times, betting minus 400, but we're only like maybe a month away from cashing that if the Lions keep on playing. And that's a 25% ROI. You could do worse things with your money for a month. In fact, you could put the unit that you're going to win, like bet 4 to win 1, put the 1 unit on the 4-1 Lions Super Bowl ticket, and you kind of just get like a little bit of a free roll on what looks like the 1 seed, probably an NFC championship, and you can go from there at plus 400. So I think you get creative with these division leaders also. But the one I like best is one I think you're going to talk about. So I'll let you talk about the NFC West.
Yeah, I don't think people thought they'd tune in to get a minus 400 from Brandon, not his style. But I think he's right though, and I do think it's a good play right now. But I had 2 opinions here. I wanted to take Cincinnati at 120 to 1, but it's impossible. So there's just no way they're going to win enough games to get there. So I'll throw away that division. And yeah, what you're talking about is Seattle. So Arizona already beat San Francisco and the Rams, but they have 2 games left against Seattle, which I do believe is an opportunity for the division there. Seattle is already split with San Francisco, and they're 0-1 with the Rams, which they could split as well week 18 in LA. Also, Seattle is also a bet on this weekend, pretty much as well. I mean, the plays on the division and the play on this weekend is kind of synonymous. And to me, Arizona does have an advantage. They still have New England and Carolina on the schedule, but I do believe there is room there for Seattle to win the division. So I know you like it. I think it's the right side. And I think it was probably a better bet before San Francisco, but I think it's okay.
Yeah, well, I think if you just look at the schedule, just these next 2 weeks, Seattle home against Arizona. I'm on Seattle. We'll get to that in a little bit. So if Seattle wins, they tie Arizona, who's 1 game up right now, with the tie break because they haven't played yet. So Seattle takes the head-to-head lead on Arizona. I'm already fading the Rams Sunday night against the Eagles, so they stay a game back. The Niners are at Green Bay. We'll see what happens with them. They're at Buffalo next week. Got to assume the Niners lose one of those games. Arizona goes to Minnesota next week. They could lose another game. There's a plausible world where Seattle beats Arizona this week, wins next week. That will be coming up again soon, and is a full 1-game lead on the division 1 week from now. Like we're right there from very obvious possible outcomes, leaving Seattle the leader, and then you can still hedge. You've got a 6-1 now on the division leader, and you can add a different team if you want to like play out your portfolio a little bit. So I think it's just the right ticket to buy right now for Seattle.
All right, time to bet Gino at home, I guess. All right, last one before we get into best bets. I just want to talk about updated win totals. If you have something that you're interested in, and for me personally, when I look at in-season win totals, I look at the week ahead, which usually has the most impact on the current market, home, road, left, next 4, and remaining strength of schedule. So those are kind of the things that I tend to look at. But where were you here?
Yeah, I mentioned a couple already. I mentioned the Ravens over and the Bengals over. I think those are both good plays. I don't think I mentioned it, but the Tampa over also over 8.5 is a good angle, even if they don't quite catch Atlanta. That one's plus money. The one I hadn't mentioned is Washington. I also like their over here. We talked about that game already. They're big favorites this weekend. They're big favorites next weekend against the Titans. They're already 7-4. So you win those 2 games as big favorites, you get to 9-4. We need 12 wins to go over. So after that, they have a bye week. Then they still have the Eagles game left, but they still have another Saints game and a Cowboys game. And those are the only 2 road games left on their entire schedule. The Dallas game is week 18. Dallas is going to want to lose that game by then to get a better draft pick. So in Washington probably is coasting into the playoffs at that point. So probably like a dead rubber sort of game, but every game left is winnable. I think there's pretty easy pivots out of if you don't like it. So I think Washington over 11.5 is a pretty good looking bet.
I like that Washington bet. The only ones I was looking at were 2 were luck angles from our Nick Giffen, who works here. Under 11.5 Steelers they're the third luckiest team so far this season. I know a few people like Cleveland tonight, so we'll see what happens there. The other one was Chargers under 10.5, which is plus 130. They're the fourth luckiest team, and they've got the Ravens this week, so maybe a tough situation. The last one for me was Jets under 5.5. I'm still trying to figure out how they get to 6 wins when you've still got Seattle at home, at Miami coming up after the bye, which could be 0-2, and Geno Smith going back to New York with some revenge. And then at Jacksonville, like, are we even sure that's a win for the Jets right now, given their status? And then Rams, Buffalo, Miami to end the year. It's not easy. So I kind of like Jets under 5.5. But let's move forward here before we move on. A quick announcement. Action Network is running back our annual Black Friday sale, offering our best price of the year on a year-long Action Pro subscription. So if you still aren't a Pro subscriber, visit actionnetwork.com/Black Friday to get $40 off a year of Pro and receive instant access to all the picks, all the projections from Brandon Anderson to Chris Raybon to our very own Stuckey and our whole Action Network team. That's actionnetwork.com/Black Friday for the best price of the year on Action Pro. All right, let's get to best bets. Brandon Anderson, it is your time to shine. You are up over 6 units last week, thanks to the Doug Peterson funeral escalator. Called you the funeral director. Still going to give you that title. You're up over 21 units on the season, 17% ROI, $100 up a few grand. Not too shabby. But listen, you're going to start with Eagles, Rams, Sunday Night Football. Eagles are undefeated this year with A.J. Brown, 7-0, 30 points per game. You already have a pick on the hot read, but you like something else here. So what are you giving us?
Yeah, I've got the Eagles side on the hot read. I'm not going to be doing any sides today. I like my favorite sides that I already gave out. Ravens, Eagles, some of those. So check the hot read and the look ahead. I'm going to play the first half under here, under 24.5. And some of the analysis is going to sound similar to the hot read here. I like how Philadelphia matches up. Those rookie corners, you're hearing more and more about them now. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. I like how they match up. I like how they match up with the two Rams receivers and in the slot there. Since their bye week, the Eagles have the number one defense. That is Vic Fangio working his magic. And in particular, in this matchup, they're number one against the deep ball. They force you to matriculate down the field. That's not going well for Matthew Stafford. Stafford is making too many mistakes this year. And I think kind of taking away the deep stuff, forcing you to just work your way down these 10 and 12 play drives. That's what the Eagles do because they're running the ball all the time now. Stafford's making too many mistakes. On the flip side, we know about, you mentioned Verse and Fisk, the young front. I think the Rams defense has really impressed me this year. They're a team I called a bottom 3 defense before the year. That defensive front has been really good. Darius Williams came over from Jacksonville. He's been really good at corner for them. Rams, by the numbers, last 6 games are a fringe top 10 defense. I think that's a little rich for me, but that improvement helps the under here. Now, they're not great against the run. That's not good against Philadelphia, but Philadelphia is the run-heaviest team the last 6 weeks. They're bottom 5 neutral pace. You're going to run the ball. That's going to slow the game down. Go ahead. Give me a 14-play Philadelphia drive that chews up like 9 minutes of the clock. That gets us to the under just fine. So some of the trends here, Monday night and Sunday night primetime primetime unders are 61% over the last 5 years. Now, that stat hasn't been as good this season, but as you know, it has been on Sunday night. 8-3 to the under still Sunday. And then we've talked about this one before. Nick Sirianni, over at home, 70%. Under on the road, 61%. A stark contrast. I don't mind the full game here, but the last thing that took me to first half, DVOA offense. Eagles in the first half, 27th. We've talked about how bad they've been in the first quarter. Rams first half, 20th. Second half, Eagles jumped to third by DVOA, and Rams into the top 10 as well. First half unders, Rams are 7-3 to the under. Eagles are 8-2 to the under in the first half. So I will take the Sunday night Eagles, Rams under 24.5.
Yeah, key number too. Make sure you try to get at least 24 in that one, especially with lower scoring in the first half. All right, next game, Minnesota at Chicago. You're going to be focusing on the first quarter here, so I'm going to give you a stat to kind of set you up. This season, Minnesota is 8-2 against a first quarter spread. Chicago, 2-8 against a first quarter spread. I'm assuming you're taking that one.
I am. I'm going to play the Vikings first quarter. So it's minus half a point at plus 130. Effectively, that is a Vikings 3-way money line. You have to look at the books, make sure that you get the three-way money line. That means you lose if you tie, hence the minus 0.5 here, but I like it. So as a Vikings fan, I don't back my Vikings a lot. You know this. This particular game used to be nightmare fuel. Chicago had won 16 out of 19 games home in Chicago against the Vikings, but Minnesota's won 4 games in a row now. So I think this new regime has kind of moved past that a little bit. Minnesota's still number 1 defensively, run and pass number 1. And I think Brian Flores and all that pressure is just going to give Caleb Williams his own nightmares this week. That is not going to go well for a guy that has not done well with pressure, specifically catering to his desire to hold the ball and try to escape and do something. I don't feel like that's going to go that well here. Bears defense has been worse early. Bottom 10 in the first half by DVOA, top 10 in the second half. Vikings offense, a big thing Vikings fans love and love to hate. Kevin O'Connell's scripted plays are bangers. Like, they get out to a hurry. They're putting up offense right away. Minnesota is the number 2 offense in the first quarter. Then the script runs out and it doesn't go so well after that. That's fine. We already cashed our bet by that point, hopefully. So yeah, I didn't even have the ATS numbers on the teams here, but here's what I found digging in. Bears in the first quarter this season, 10 games, scoreless in 7 of the 10 games. You score 0, we're going to be pretty good on our bet here. Now we just need a point. They've scored 1 first quarter touchdown. They have 13 points in the first quarter the entire season. They're 0-7-3 straight up. They have not won a first quarter all season. The Vikings are 8-1-1 in the first quarter. In fact, even in the 2 losses, they won the first quarter. Minnesota has 10 touchdowns in 10 first quarters this season. They've scored in all but 1. They have 82 points on the season. So I like Minnesota to get the plus 130 to win the first quarter. Again, get that first quarter 3-way. The money line at most books is like minus 125. So you're paying 55 cents to not even win on a tie. Just get your money back in a tie. That is not the way I bet things here. So I just want to make sure you understand that part. And the way I do bet things here, let's sprinkle a little bit on minus 6.5 in the first quarter. That's plus 350. We'll take a 7-0 win. The Vikings have hit that line half of their games this season. They're averaging a first quarter margin of victory by 6.2. So right about that number. So Vikings first quarter 3-way at plus 130 at the Bears.
I like it. And we were talking about this earlier about Caleb's sacks. And this stat is just crazy and stands out to me. When he gets sacked 4+ times, they're 0-4 this year, scoring 41 points in 4 games. 3 or less, they're 4-2, averaging 26 points per game, 20+ points in 5 of those 6 games. It's just a matter of Flores' defense can get to him, and in the past he has. So that is definitely something and to be aware of, and that is good on that end. All right, next bet here, Denver and Vegas. So the Broncos haven't beaten the Raiders in Oakland or Vegas since October of 2015 behind Peyton Manning. So what is your angle on this one?
Yeah, I got a trio of first quarter bets here, and I'm backing those Raiders in the first quarter at home. I wanted to do more. I don't mind looking at a whole game money line here. I kind of think the Broncos are a bit at their peak price right now. I could see the Raiders getting this one, but I'm going to just do the same bet I just did for Minnesota. Raiders first quarter, the 3-way money line. This one's plus 215. So we need the Raiders to win the first quarter outright. So yeah, as you mentioned, Denver has not won here in Las Vegas or wherever the Raiders are playing for a decade, basically. They didn't win anywhere. They beat them in October in Denver, but the Raiders had won 8 games in a row in this rivalry before that. So I think this is a good spot to bet against Denver after they played just like the perfect matchup in Atlanta. We talked about, just no pass rush. Bo Nix just kind of shredding, a practice defense more or less. And this is a good, obvious sort of letdown spot. And in fact, Denver's defense, Denver's offense is trending up. That is the one metric that the Raiders are still kind of okay at. There's a lot of bad metrics. I've been betting a lot against the Raiders, but that's the one thing they can hold a little bit. Denver's defense obviously is a strength here. Denver's defense is better in the second half. They're a little better with the lead, but you got to get the lead first. And I think that the Raiders can maybe get the lead early and hang around. They're awful in the second half. They're around average defensively early. And again, with the first quarter number, they're nearly a top 5 offense in the first quarter. Why? I have no idea. I don't understand. I guess we're scripting plays pretty well. That's the one thing. We just switched out the offensive coordinator there too. But I think that the Raiders can hang early. In fact, I know they can. Because the last time they played Denver a month ago, they won 10-0 in the first quarter. They lost the game by 16, but they won the first quarter. They beat the Chargers in the first quarter too. Denver has lost the first quarter 5 times already and finished tied 3 more times. So they've only actually won the first quarter twice. They lost to the Raiders in the first quarter. They lost to the Panthers in the first quarter. They have been able to come back and figure things out, but I'm playing the first quarter angle here. So here's one tricky part here. On the Vikings, I want nothing to do with the tie part. I just want the 3-way. With the Raiders, they finished tied the end of the first quarter 4 times. The Broncos 3 times. That's pretty hefty. Like, that is a significant amount here. And it is the first quarter. You get like 2-3 long drives, quarter's over, still 0-0. Like, that's a pretty easy way to tie. So I don't mind, in this case, if you want to play the plus 0.5 line. That's at minus 130. Now a tie wins you the bet. Again, I don't want the money line. Don't give me an option where the tie just gets my money back. I want to win stuff. Let's not get money back here. Let's win our money back. So I don't mind that one. I don't mind if you want to kind of split the bet. The reason I'm going with the more aggressive bet here is, hi, I'm Brandon. We go with the more aggressive bet here. But just from the math, if you play the plus half a point line, 1 unit wins 0.77 units. If you play my line here, the 3-way, so that we lose a tie instead of winning it, 1 unit wins 2.15. So almost triple the payout here. Basically, I don't have to have the tie happening like something more like 25, 35% of the time for that to happen. And I think that's just a little too rich for me. So Raiders, first quarter. We're going first quarter bonanza this week. We got one more to come, but plus 210 3-way against the Broncos.
Get your win in and get out. In terms of perception, Denver, this is the crazy one. The look ahead line on this one before the season would have been Vegas -3. So it's a 9-point flip based off of how Bo Nix and Sean Payton's team's been playing lately. But a wild one. Let's get to your final game here. This line has flipped favorite and underdog about 4 times since it opened. It is, of course, Arizona at Seattle. Right now, as you're listening to this, Arizona -1, but that could change in minutes. What do you got here, Brandon?
I know. It flips like every time you look at it. So I basically just thinking of this game as a pick'em. So I struggled here because I like Seattle on the game, but I like Arizona early. So I'm going to give you a couple parts here. I'll talk through them. You can choose as you're listening to play which parts you like or play the whole thing because you know we're playing the whole thing too. So first bet, first quarter, give me the Cardinals over 3.5 points. It's plus 105. So that's my first quarter angle here. I wanted just the same bet as the last two. The Cardinals have been looking good in the first quarter, but Seattle's kind of hung around. The ATS and straight ups have not been good. I do think the Cardinals score here. I don't need to know if Seattle scores early. In fact, I kind of want them to for reasons we'll get to later. So this is a big matchup, right? We talked about this earlier on. Arizona up a game in the division. Arizona's coming off the bye week. Now, the metrics say that Arizona's defense is getting pretty good lately. They're 12th by DVOA overall defensively and running and passing. I don't know that this is my number 32 defense by talent on the field. So credit to what Nick Rallis is doing there. This is not the 12th best defense. This is, you just played Chicago and the Jets, who suck right now offensively, and the numbers are juiced a little bit. I am more convinced of the offense, and that's why I like the first quarter here. In fact, I've been mentioning the first quarter DVOA numbers. Arizona is the number 1 first quarter offense on the season. Seattle is number 32. So you have the best and the worst offense playing each other in the first quarter. Cardinals have scored at least a touchdown 7 of 10 first quarters on the season. So that's the scripted thing. And now we're scripted off the bye. You have this big game on the road you're prepping for. I think Arizona scores early. So Arizona first quarter over 3.5 points, plus 105. But I still like Seattle on the game. I still like them to win the game outright. And I actually think Seattle's defense, not Arizona, is the sneaky good defense. Remember back in weeks 4 through 6, they had 3 games in 11 days. And they were missing like half of their defenders too, because they got a whole bunch of injuries at just the wrong time. If you exclude that 3-game window when things went really badly, they're a top 7 defense on the season, top 8 against the pass and the run. Mike McDonald, when he was in Baltimore, his defenses would peak in the second half as they're coming out there. We saw them have a really good game against San Fran last week, and their defense played much better at home so far this season. Almost a top 10 defense at home, even with the whole season. Cardinals defense, way worse on the road. They've been a top 5 home defense. They've been a bottom 10 road defense. So I like how it sets up for Seattle. If you just want to play Seattle, I think that's fine. If you want to live bet Seattle, I can't tell you the number here because we're recording this on Thursday. But if I'm right, Arizona takes the lead, you get to juice your price on the money line, right? So you could just do that. Or you can play both together. Arizona over the 3.5 points, the bet we just said, plus Seattle money line. Now books have to factor in. We got negative correlation there. So that one is a plus 380 there. All right, Arizona can get a touchdown in the first quarter. Seattle still win. I'm fine with that. Like, that's going to happen plenty of times. So I like that one. If you want, you can even still add in Arizona winning the first quarter, which they have a good chance to do because they're scoring anyway. Now we're at plus 725 there. So I think that's a good way to play it. And then again, if you only play one thing on this game, I think the real play is the one we said already, Seattle division odds, plus 600 because of the case we laid out earlier. So pick the ones you like, put them together, make your parlay if you want. For this bet, 2 parts. Arizona first quarter, at least 4 points, and then Arizona 3.5 points plus the Seattle money line at 380. That's the bet.
Yeah, I was messing around here at a sports book trying to put those pieces together. Arizona first quarter to win, Seattle money line felt like a fun anti-correlation there in terms of expecting the comeback. I even tried to toss in maybe Arizona plus 7.5 as well, assuming maybe it gets like to be a close game. Okay, those are your games. Let's get to your props now. We're going to stay in the same game. So what's your first prop? It is Seattle and Arizona.
Yeah, I'm going with the Tyler Lockett, over 36.5 receiving yards. Now, the last 3 games, he only has 6 catches, 91 yards, so it looks like he's fading. But you think of the numbers, he's actually played his highest snap percent of the season. I think the problem is DK Metcalf missed 2 of those games. I think Lockett is kind of playing out of position. So with DK back, I think it actually is a better spot for Lockett. Zoom out to the whole season. He's had 45 yards or more 7 of 10 games, including one of these last 3, even with this kind of weak stretch here. He's had 60 yards or better in half of those games. So why this one caught my eye in the first place? Arizona's bottom 3 by DVOA against wide receiver 3, which that's definitely what Lockett is at this point. Yeah. When the other guys are healthy, they just don't have enough guys to cover everyone. So remember, Arizona's defense worse on the road as well. Over 36.5 yards for Tyler Lockett. I think that's just a little too low. Should be like 5-10 yards higher. 60 plus yards is 3-1. I think we'll put part of the bet on there. He's hit that half of his games this season.
Yeah, especially if Arizona's up early and Seattle needs to throw a little bit more to get back in the game. Sounds good to me. All right, your next game is Minnesota, Chicago. Just to tease your bet, Minnesota has allowed the 10th most completions this season, 4th most in the NFC, which was a little surprising to me. Kind of leads to where you're going. So what are you thinking here?
Yeah, I was surprised by that as well. I'm going to play DJ Moore over 4.5 receptions. It's even odds, and we're going to take the escalator all the way to the top. So a stat I saw from Field Yates at ESPN is what caught my eye here. So we know that the Bears switched to Thomas Brown, the new offensive coordinator, right? So here's what happened. Last week, the one game with Thomas Brown, I don't know, tiny sample size, they threw to DJ Moore 7 times. He caught all 7 passes, and why is because his ADOT was under a yard. These are wide receiver screens. These are quick passes. Get the ball to our speedy DJ Moore. Let him get some yak. He had 56 yards after the catch last week. The whole rest of the season, the first 10 weeks, his ADOT was over 8 yards per target, and he had 176 yak the whole season. He had a third of that just last week. He caught 61% of his passes on the season versus 100%. It's real easy to catch a pass behind the line. That's like right there. Even Caleb Williams can't miss that one. This is just get the ball to our playmaker and let him cook. So what are you going to do if you're Minnesota? You're going to blitz. You're going to bring the pressure. You're going to make Caleb Williams make quick decisions. How about some quick decisions, getting the ball to my playmaker and letting him cook? I think that makes a lot of sense here. And like you mentioned, with the receptions being high, Minnesota is the number 1 defense, but they've allowed the 3rd most wide receiver fantasy points because teams are behind. They got to keep passing. Yeah. Here are the guys that I think profile similar to DJ Moore, kind of the shifty receiver, quick, short passes, let him cook a little bit. Here's their receptions. Wan'Dale Robinson, 6 in the opener. Debo, 8. Stephon Diggs, 10 catches. Jaden Reed, 7. Garrett Wilson, 13 catches. Amon-Ra, 8 catches. Puka, 7 catches. That's 6 guys with 7 or more catches that are pretty similar style receiver to DJ Moore. So I love the 4.5 receptions here. We're definitely taking that. Take the escalator all the way up. 7 catches or more is plus 375. Again, 6 guys have done that already. We're definitely playing that one. 8 catches plus 750, 9 catches, 13-1. Got to touch them all. DJ Moore, Escalator. It's my favorite of all these props here.
Nice. Yeah, you might have a trailing game script as well, which could help out a bunch of dumps trying to get upfield. All right. Next game here. Nothing like a welcome back prop. A guy who's been hurt for a little while, supposedly, healthy again, coming back this week. Who do you like to score a touchdown?
Yeah, I love my Mike Evans touchdowns. Give me an Evans touchdown plus 160 at the Giants. Now, look, I took the under on this game. It's fine. Evans can score a touchdown, maybe even two. We can still hit that. Giants defense, good up front, not great in the secondary. Second to last against wide receiver one in the season. Second to last against deep passes. Deontay Banks is shadowing, and Deontay Banks is letting receivers eat all season long. They're averaging, wide receiver one against Deontay Banks is averaging just under a touchdown a game. 5 of the 9 had a touchdown. 3 of them had multiple touchdowns playing the Giants, playing Deontay Banks. So Evans so far has missed a bunch of time. Still 6 touchdowns. He's tied for 4th in the NFL with 6 touchdowns and effectively 6 games so far. He's got multiple touchdowns twice already. Baker Mayfield, just off the bye week, heading into the bye, he led the league in passing touchdowns. He was tied with 2 other guys for the lead, 24, and no Chris Godwin. Evans is the guy now. Evans has to be the guy for the touchdowns. Now, he's coming back from injury, so do we get the full snaps? We don't need the full snaps. Where are you going to use Mike Evans? In the red zone. If you only get part of the snaps, you're saving them for the red zone when they get there. Evans has at least 1 touchdown in a Baker Mayfield game 15 out of 24 times since Mayfield came over. So 63% of the time. That would be like a minus 175 here. We're getting plus 160. I think this line is way off, kind of over factoring the injury here. 2 touchdowns plus 850. Not necessarily likely, but Evans can certainly do it. So we got to nibble that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I was thinking 4 receptions, 5 targets, 2 touchdowns. Get him off the field, get him out of there. I like it. All right. Let's go to the next one, and I'm going to foreshadow it. I'm just going to give it away here. But George Kittle, Packers. Kittle's had 60-plus receiving yards his last 3 games versus Green Bay. You like him, and the total's much lower than that. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to take the Kittle over 45.5. Another guy coming off an injury here. High leverage game, almost loser goes home sort of game in the NFC, I think.
Yeah.
I really wanted to do all sorts of stuff with this game. I like the Niners in the first half, I like the Packers in the second half. I couldn't make up my mind. These are volatile teams. I don't know if I need a side here. I do think Kittle shows up. Packers have been a bottom 5 team against tight ends by DVOA and bottom 5 against short passing. The problem is it hasn't really popped yet because the Packers haven't played any good tight ends yet. They've only faced 2 top 20 fantasy tight ends. Even despite that, they're so bad defending that they've allowed 42 yards or more. So basically this line to 5 tight ends. Guys like Colby Parkinson, Josh Wiley, Brenton Strange. These are the guys putting up 42 yards. The one good tight end that they have faced is Trey McBride. He had 8 catches for 96 yards. So I think we might get more of that sort of range for George Kittle. This line's just low, and I know the injury thing, but he's been cleared. I think he looks good to go. Kittle's had 45 yards or more 7 straight games, all but the opener. He had 57 or more all but one of those games. He's averaging 74 yards in that stretch. So this line is just too low to me. And I don't mind if you want to add in a touchdown as well. He's scored a touchdown in 6 out of 8 games this year. Green Bay's been a bad red zone team, and Kittle just keeps scoring. He's 2-1 to score a touchdown. I might play those separate rather than together just because, again, like Evans, we could get a touchdown even if we don't get a lot of touches along the way. But the main bet here is George Kittle over 45.5 receiving yards.
Yeah, and it's kind of script agnostic. He, winning, losing, Purdy's still going to look at him, especially because he hasn't been playing fantastic lately, and it's an easy blanket to try to get yards upfield. I think it makes a lot of sense. 1 prop left here. We have 2 totals of 50-plus on the board this week, and you're attacking one of those games. What's the prop you like?
Yeah, give me a David Montgomery over here. So over the rushing yards, 57.5 plus a touchdown. So it's the same game parlay plus 168. We've done this one before, right? The Detroit script, when they're a big favorite, get the lead, run the clock out. I wanted to look at the Colts here over a touchdown, but we know the stat about Jared Goff indoors. Like, it's just, I don't want to catch the falling knife here. The Colts run defense, bottom 10 the last 6 weeks. That's scary to me against probably the best run team in football with the Lions. Montgomery's been a touchdown machine in Detroit. Last 2 seasons, kind of the playoffs, he has at least 1 touchdown, 21 of 27 games, 78% of the time. Now, look, you can play just that at minus 175. I'm not here to give you heavily juiced bets. That number is heavily in our favor. It should be like over minus 300. So if you just want to like get some money, that's a pretty good way to go. Montgomery said 55 and a touchdown just over half of those games, 14 out of 27. Colts have allowed 6 of 11 running backs this season to have at least 78 yards and a score. For the last 6 games, they've allowed that. So just the traditional over here. You can do just like a 50 plus if you prefer. I don't want a huge Montgomery rushing yards line. I just want to juice my touchdown odds a little bit. So over the yards plus a touchdown at plus 168.
As a guy who's had him on fantasy the last 2 years, he'll have that by halftime. Don't worry about it. All right, you've got to don't go anywhere. You got to look ahead line right now, and you're going to talk Thanksgiving quickly. Talk about the look ahead line. It's a little bit of a tease here. It's a Geno revenge spot. What do you got?
Yeah, give me the Seahawks plus 1.5 at the Jets. The Seahawks plus 1.5 at the Jets. What are we doing? I am personally insulted by this line. How are the Jets still favored? They're 3-8 straight up. They are 3-8 against the spread. They're 3-5 as favorites straight up. The wins are against the Titans and the Patriots. They beat the Texans, but we already know the Texans aren't that great of a team overall either. The Jets have lost as a favorite of 2, 2.5, 4.5, 7, 8. 2 of those losses at home, and we're still making them favorites. What are we doing? What are the Jets better at in this game? They're worse at offense. They're worse running the ball and passing. They're worse on defense, running and passing, all by DVOA. They're worse special teams. They're certainly worse as coaching. Do they even have a coach or a GM? I don't know what's happening over there. What are they better? Like receivers? No thanks. I'd rather have Seattle's trio. Quarterback? I don't know, man. Geno Smith's playing pretty well. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is anymore. Like, I honestly don't know what the Jets are. Frankly, coming out of the bye week, would it be totally shocking if Aaron Rodgers just got benched and they're just like, we're just done. We're done. We're moving on. We're going to go forward. And if that did happen, we're getting a lot of CLV on our bet here. I think either way, this is going to end up Seattle favored. I looked in Bet Labs. Only one time ever in our database is there week 13 or later a team that is winning and covering less than a third of the time favored against a team 500 or better. Only one time in 20 years have we had this looking line. I don't think we're going to get it here either because I think they close as underdogs as they should be. And then the stat, if Seattle does end up favored, since 2011, road favorites under 6 points against a team coming off of a bye week. So we know you're better even though the opponent's rested. 28, 15, and 1, 65% against the spread. Give me Seattle plus 1.5. They will be favored when this game kicks off.
The Jets have only been underdogs to the Bills, Vikings, and 49ers this year. That's just not the company they're supposed to keep.
No.
And it's just unreal week to week when we see that. Okay, Thanksgiving, one game here. You have a just give us what you're thinking here. I know it's a bit of a look ahead.
Yeah, it's just a little nibble, little early taste of Thanksgiving. Give me the Lions minus 10. We'll be coming back to this one. You and I will be recording. We're going to record next Tuesday late night. You'll get the podcast for Best Bets Wednesday. Everything from Action Network comes to you. It's all coming next week. It's just all out by Wednesday morning. Best Bets will be up. So we'll talk about why. But Evan, you and I both have trend stuff coming out next week. Here are a few trends that will like this one. On Thanksgiving, I bet Detroit. On Thanksgiving, I bet big favorites. On Thanksgiving, I bet any favorite that is not named Dallas. All those things are good for the Lions. I think this one is going to get to 13 or 14 by kickoff, so I'm going to grab it now at 10. That's the bet I know I'm going to be making next week, Monday and Tuesday anyway, so I may as well get the extra points here. We'll talk about it more later.
And a little tease from my trends article. This will be the Lions' biggest favorite on Thanksgiving since 1968, but can't wait to go through that next week. This has been the Best Bets podcast on the Action Network. I'm Evan Abrams, your host. That's Brandon Anderson. We will be back, like he said, on Tuesday with a extravaganza of Thanksgiving sides and entrees and all your best bets. Thanks for listening and enjoy the slate, everyone.